Welcome to the Somewhat Creative Show, a podcast about the ideas, tools, and trends shaping our creative world. I'm Clark Miller alongside my very good friend, Rocky Tilney. In each episode, we dive into the realities of being a creative in design, branding, media, tech, and, Bed, Bath, and beyond, all of the beyonds. Today, we're talking about the unconventional journey and how many of us don't move through life or careers in a straight line anymore. Plus, we'll be joined by Jay Underwood, who has been involved in a number of startup technologies to discuss his journey and how creativity plays a part in everything from engineering to music to startups and everything in between, I imagine. Let's get into it. Rocky, how are you?
Cool. I'm good. Doing good as always. The sun is shining today.
Also, I want to point out that I made it through that entire intro without really screwing it up poorly. I think it sounded a little canned, but I did a pretty good job, and I think I should pat myself on the back.
You really should. It's not bad. This is our third show, and that's your first time doing the intro, and it was flawless.
I
Good
think I'm
job,
done
man.
for the day. I think that's all you get from me.
That's it. That's the
That's it.
that's the podcast. No, I'm super excited about this topic though, and this is something we've talked about a lot. Is that nothing's ever in a linear path or a straight line,
It's true.
especially when it comes to creativity, careers, whatever. And so, as we were talking about potentially using this as one of our topics, I wanted to do a deeper dive and see, like, well, what are some journeys that maybe people that are famous or somewhat famous for the Somewhat Creative Show
Okay.
that have gone through this unconventional journey. And so I did some digging and I found a few that I thought were actually pretty fascinating. I didn't know the whole stories of some of these folks, but I thought I would talk a little bit about them. And just the other side of this too is that it's, when we talk about creativity, like my career has been fairly narrow in that it's been graphic design, it's been web design, it's been pretty much like contained to that sort of very narrow career field. Some of the people I'm going to talk about, it's very different. I mean, it's entertainment, but it's also music. It's film, it's TV.
Yeah.
Very different kind of ideas and backgrounds here. But
Tell you, it's funny you chose this as the topic and a direction to go in because I actually did find one not famous but somewhat famous person that has the same sort of a little bit of the same story, but I can tell that it's a small one, so I'll let you dive
yeah,
into some of yours first.
absolutely. So Donald Glover, who we all know as an actor, also a
Childish Gambino.
musician. Yep. Um, a lot of people maybe just know him as Childish Gambino. Didn't realize
Mm-hmm.
he was an actor. Um, but he's also written comedy. I did not know this, but Tina Fey actually hired him as a writer on 30 Rock,
Oh wow.
which had no idea. He was in Community, the show Community.
Yep. I was a big fan.
Um, then he launched his music career as Childish Gambino. So hip hop, and the song "This Is America" that was
Mm-hmm.
super popular for a long time.
Can I give you a fun
He,
fact? I don't. Do you
I,
know
I
the
would
fun fact about him?
about the name.
Yeah. I'll let you do it
I
then.
think I might, but I'll let you go.
Darn it. I was gonna give you a fun fact about, but no. It's if you already know it. He got his rap name from a rap name generator back in the
Yep,
day when those were all the rage.
yep. I did know that before AI too. Probably it was probably
Mm-hmm.
just a random combination.
Assortment of words. Yeah, they probably just had a list that it drew from.
Exactly, exactly. Um, I didn't know this either. I didn't know he directed and wrote the Star Wars spin-off Solo. I knew he was in it.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
I did not know that he
Wow.
wrote. So that's kind of a crazy, varied career, right? You wouldn't
Yeah.
think going from, uh, hip hop to, TV to writing, um, you know, comedy writing too, which is actually very, very difficult. Um, so this is like one of those things where like he just sort of doesn't pick a lane. He's
Mm-hmm.
just like wherever the creativity takes him, he sort of just
Also
flows
another
into that.
also another fun fact about him. Not related to Danny Glover from Lethal Weapon.
I did
So
not. I didn't assume they were related, but now
I always assumed they were
you've
because
proven that
Donald
they
Glover,
they were.
Danny Glover,
Yeah,
just I mean,
yeah,
how many Glovers are there in the world? But apparently there's at least two.
yeah. So it brings up this interesting idea of like self-invention, right? Like you could be, pretty much anything. And And I also, it's funny that I thought about this a little bit when we were doing our rebranding from for the agency from Studio 22 to Upspire
Hmm.
Labs. I was like, well, why can't we just be anything we want? Why do we have to fit within this like design agency sort of narrow kind of channel, right?
Yeah.
And it does give you that kind of ability to pivot out like whenever you want. Let's say AI took over design just like in 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, what
What
does that
would
do
your
to all the agencies, right? Like,
what would you call
wh-
yourself?
what would you do? So it's like
Hmm.
it's like, and I think a lot of creative people in entertainment and stuff maybe are thinking about, well, let me do music, let me do this. It's like the same sort of disciplines are involved in those pursuits, and maybe there's these sort of adjacent things you can do as a creative that allows you to explore different, different ideas.
Yeah. Well, and I'll add on to that that my journey through my career has not been a straight line at all. I started in photography and went through, web design periods and back into photography and then into the agency world and then into editorial for many years and got to use a lot of those same skills that I was like crafting
Hmm.
photography with in the, art directing of photo shoots and all sorts of stuff. So it's I think it's valuable to kind of go through some of those interesting journeys.
Absolutely. Yeah, and a few other folks that have had interesting kind of pathways. Lady Gaga, she dropped out of NYU. She was a writer for Britney Spears and Fergie. I did not know that. Um, and just how different her music has progressed too. Like
Yeah.
the different types of songs that have been popular, that she sort of popularized.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's fascinating. And then obviously going into acting with A Star Is Born, and you know all the accolades for her work
Yeah.
there. But
And I think
that's
in general, there's just so many more doors open to people now that you don't have to stick to one thing. I think that's the beauty of, the internet age, I guess. And actually the person I was going to bring up, I recently saw, I'm a big Severance fan.
yes.
Um, we've probably talked about that, but I love the opening credits as well. The especially the latest season two's opening credits with this like very cool CGI, but it looks like claymation. And I recently found out that the person that actually
Hmm.
did that work on those opening credits, it was not a studio, it was not an agency, as I usually find out when I like go, who made those? It's usually some, Australian agency that specializes in opening credits for HBO and a million other places. But this one
Right.
actually was interesting. It was a motion designer on Instagram. Ben Stiller just happened to see his work,
Oh
and he
wow.
does a lot of very odd, very like amorphous people and
Mm.
people coming out of the mouths of other people.
Yeah.
His Instagram handle is extra wig, but his name is Oliver Latta. I think he's in the
Hmm.
UK. And he just happened to be seen by Ben Stiller. Ben Stiller contacted him and said, "Hey, I love your work. I would love to have you do the opening credits for my show that I'm producing and directing and working on." And now he's won an Emmy for it, I think, for the opening credits. So it's amazing what a path you can find nowadays in the creative world.
We should do a whole episode on opening credits. 'Cause
I
there's a few
you
that I could
could
think of that would be pretty, like Mad Men opening credit
Mad
was
Men, I mean
amazing.
Game of Thrones,
Game of
like there's
Thrones.
iconic ones. Oh, what was the Hannibal Lecter show on NBC? I don't know if you remember those opening credits. Those had good ones. It was kind of like another good one, Dexter. That's a
Oh
classic.
yeah, haven't seen
The
that show in a
fruit
while.
slicing. Do you remember that one?
Yeah,
It was like
yeah.
everything had a very normal, like he was just going about his morning, but everything was in a very
Like
creative shot, like very much like blood spatter and
yeah,
like
very menacing way.
yeah. That was a cool opening credits. We could do a whole show on opening credits. Maybe we just pivot this whole show. Now
Well,
it's
if we
opening
do it,
credits show.
well, hey, if we do that, we need to have some pull in some video clips and stuff too, so we could talk
Yeah.
about it and show it at the same time.
I don't think we're there yet. We need to figure out how to do that before we actually do that. So
Yeah,
we'll
that's all
stick
in
with
we'll do it
unconventional
all in the
journeys.
post, right?
Yeah.
One more unconventional journey, and I have his book right here. It's called it's Rick Rubin,
Oh sure.
and the book is really kind of his just creative thought process, essentially. There's no like purpose of the book. It's just
Hmm.
his ideas and thoughts about creativity.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't know how like accomplished this guy was really. He co-founded Def Jam Records in NYU in his dorm room.
Hmm.
He launched LL Cool J, Run DMC, Beastie Boys. Um, he produced for like Johnny Cash, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jay-Z,
Wow.
Kanye too, I believe.
Yeah.
Um,
He's huge.
yeah, so he's done some really interesting work, but he from what I've read about him, he describes himself more as like a reducer than a producer. So he's just taking
Hmm.
basically the essence out of these artists, and that's his like kind of creative driver,
Yeah.
essentially. It's not like he's not like a technical producer in the classical sense. He's more like
Hmm.
a gut kind of intuitive producer.
Yeah. He's got
Um,
that famous clip going around the internet at that where somebody's interviewing him and they're like, "Can you play any instruments?" He's like, "No." "Can
oh, he
you
can't do,
write?
yeah,
Can you
doesn't do
sing?
anything.
Can you do anything?" Like, "No, I
Right.
don't do any of that."
Well, he's a tastemaker, maybe. That's a
Mm-hmm.
talent, right? To
Mm-hmm.
be able to find talent, produce it in a non-technical way, and just have like raw talent be displayed and showcased. I mean, that takes skill.
Well, and to some degree, that's where we go in our careers once you get to a certain point, right? I look at the journey of going from designer, junior designer, assistant designer on up through the ranks, and you get up to art director, creative director level, and at a certain point, not in my case because I still am too OCD and try to put my stamp on everything, but at a certain point, you have to give up the reins and you don't do as much. You just kind of you guide the process more than you're actually physically doing a lot of the designing. So
Right.
that's probably kind of his journey as well. It's like only maybe he kind of bypassed a lot of the normal routes up through the journey and just sort of started doing the top level. I don't know.
Yeah, any way you slice it, it's pretty fascinating, and it's a good opportunity to do a deeper dive into someone that doesn't have that has an unconventional journey
Yeah,
through not just
non-conventional. What was
work,
the
but
biggest takeaway from the book for you? Like any quotes or anything stick out?
there's tons of stuff in there. Honestly, I haven't like done footnotes on it or anything like that, but
All right. Well, if
it's
you're just
it's
not going to
just
prepare for our podcast,
I didn't prepare to talk about the book. We could do that and we could do that another time, but it is sort of this meandering journey of thought, um, without really a beginning, middle, and end to it, like a typical narrative would be. But if
yeah,
I would recommend it to anybody that's in a creative field. Check it out. It's called The
that's a
Creative
good book
Act
reco. Yeah.
by Rick Rubin, and it's just one of the things you pick up every now and again. You just start going through a few pages, and you can't read a lot of it because there's too many little takeaways
Hmm.
every time, and it's one of those books you probably want to have a highlighter ready or some note cards to kind of write some things down as you go.
Yeah. Or if you're looking for a little creative juice, a
A
little
little
inspiration,
inspo,
maybe. Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely.
Get the blood flowing. Well, I've got one thing that I wanted to mention. It's the somewhat creative of the podcast.
All
I'm
right, let's
trying
hear
to
it.
I'm trying to bring you something I found somewhat creative in the world, and I think this goes along with our episode about unconventional journeys. It was this is a couple months old now, so listeners may have already kind of come across this, but the Cheetos other hand font. Have you seen this?
I have
It's
not.
it's it's kind of it goes along. So they have a whole campaign, the Cheetos brand, that is talking about how 99% of us do everything with our dominant hand, and
Right.
including eat Cheetos. And so if you're
Okay.
eating Cheetos, you can't do anything with that hand. So it's
Right.
every part of the marketing campaign has been about like a doctor doing surgery with his non-dominant hand and it's all screwed up or whatever. This was for February 2025. I think it was centered around like the uh handwriting day or handwriting, yeah, handwrite National Handwriting Day.
Hmm.
And they created a font. This was the work of agency, Rich Silverstein's agency, Silverstein Goodby and Partners, very
Mm-hmm.
famous.
Yeah.
And they created this font, and the font is terrible. It's the worst. It's, I think, labeled as the worst font kind of ever created. And on its own, it is a bit of a gimmick, but the way they launched it, they did the kind of classic like we're rebranding Cheetos. We're making them fresh and different. And it was one of those videos that's very documentary style, and
Yeah.
like where a brand announces this big change to their image and everything, and very serious tones and everything, and taking it all very like, we're professionals and we really know what we're doing. And then you see them like drawing the font with their non-dominant hand, and it's all crappy and squiggly, and
Oh,
they're
that's
eating
funny.
Cheetos. And it's a brilliant campaign, and talk about an unconventional journey to like create something for designers. I mean, this font is available. They're putting it on like tote bags and stuff. I think you can
Mm.
buy some of the merch, but it's just, I found that just to be a very interesting route to this idea of like, let's market something very specific to a community like us. And they did it in such a creative way. I had to mention that. It's a great one to check out if you haven't seen it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That is interesting too, because it's not necessarily a person or an individual taking an unconventional direction. It's a brand itself
Yeah.
doing that. And that's pretty fun. It's fun when brands actually have the courage to follow through with those crazy ideas sometimes
hmm
too.
I think what I found also really just great about this whole campaign is how well they've stuck to the core idea of it, and not, I just, there's so many campaigns that even if they're good, it's like it's a one good idea and they kind of like toss it aside and just go back to business as usual, right? But
Right.
Cheetos has like stuck with this campaign for I think over a year now, and have found new and fresh ways of bringing it into the world, and being creative with it. So I thought that was a really fun thing to check out.
Yeah, that is really cool. Love it.
And with that, I want to bring in Jay Underwood. Jay's got an unconventional journey himself. He's coming in from startups to engineering and music, and everything in between. I want to get his take on this unconventional journey and the unconventional path into the career space. Jay, how are you?
I'm doing great. I when you guys invited me to do a podcast about journey, I started reading the Steve Perry biography.
The wrong journey.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's great to see you guys. Glad to be
Good to
here.
see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. And just as a little background, I've known Jay for maybe 6-ish, 7-ish years now, and we've done a lot of random projects together, and it's nice to be able to continue talking with Jay just on a basic friendship level, but also about business technology. We never seem to have boring conversations, and so when we were going through our guest list of who we have, like Jay came up immediately. Like, this guy has so many things to talk about, and we are I don't want to pump you up too much, Jay, but we are excited to dig into what are you up to these days? What are you doing? Would love to hear about your journey.
You guys, I remember when we all didn't have gray in our beards,
Yeah?
and now
That's very true.
now we do.
Now it's mostly gray.
Now it's
Yeah, I
all
was
gray for me.
eating
pretty
yogurt
much.
the other day, and I like had some yogurt that had gotten onto the beard, and I was like, oh, that, let me wipe that off. And I was like wiping it for like 5 minutes.
Just
It never came off.
Forever wiping your gray off. Yeah. Beard's
Yeah,
going to come off first.
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah, I
excited
mean,
to talk to you, Jay, because I feel like we got to work together a little bit. I don't feel like I know a lot about your journey and your career. So I think of you, I was telling Rocky earlier, I think of Jay as like the wolf character from Pulp Fiction, where these like companies bring him
the
in.
Harvey Keitel.
You're the Harvey Keitel of like tech, because I feel like whenever I've worked with you, it's like you're wearing different hats and you're just coming in and like telling everybody what to do, keeping everybody calm. You change your shirt, you put your pants on. Let's get the body in the car. Let's get it down to the quarry. So that's how I view Jay, and I kind of wanted to see if that was like an accurate representation of your career.
We could
Yeah,
hope
I mean,
that's true.
I would say that doing startups is a little bit like, cleaning up after a murder.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot
Founder is
involved.
the
No one really
murderer.
knows what to do.
Yeah, standing around with a
But
gun.
yeah, no, I mean, I think the creative, I think of creativity as kind of like the deployment of the right tool at the right time, kind of, and kind of the creativity is like knowing what that tool and time is. And so I've always thought of like pretty much everything has a creative element to it. It's not just the conventional things like, art and music and,
Yeah.
artistic expression, but it's also like, how do you use the tools for any given problem that you're trying to solve? There's not like a convention anymore, really. Everything is so unconventional now. And I feel like every month, a whole new set of tools becomes available that you can use. And it's really easy to kind of do it the way you've been doing it, I think. And I think there's like a natural inclination to do it that way. And one of the fun things is trying to do it a new way. Like, hey, I'm going to try to use this new thing that I haven't had experience. And the risk there is that you kind of feel like a
Fish out
noob.
of water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you have that feeling that you had when you first did your first thing, and you're like, oh man, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm learning so much. Like I try to, either on purpose or on accident, get myself in that situation as much as I can, because I think that's how you stay relevant and keep yourself, from getting stagnant and getting bored.
Yeah, and I mean that's a skill in and of itself to develop, right? That's a creative superpower in and of itself to be able to constantly reinvent and rethink things and wear a lot of different hats. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think like it's pretty easy to kind of get your system dialed in, and you're like, this is how I like to do it, and then there's like new ways to do it and in the back of your mind, you're like, that might actually be better. But you kind of don't want it to be better because you spent so much time getting, the way you do it dialed. And so I feel like you're constantly like trying to talk yourself out of how, using something new or trying it a new way, because you're like, oh, you don't want it to be true. But kind of you deep down, you're thinking, like,
how much time is it going to save me enough time to warrant the amount of time I'm going to have to spend learning this new thing? You do that calculation a million times a day, right?
But then there's always the danger of complacency too. It's like, oh, I always get a little scared, like, oh, I'm still doing X this way. And it's like, well, crap, there's probably new ways to do it now. And that now I look like I'm just doing it the old way because I got used to it. It's like, it's not necessarily better.
Don't let anybody see how you're doing anything, Rocky. That's the key.
Well, I mean, the trick is how everything's magic at the end of the day, right? Like we did it with magic.
Yeah, that's what we use.
How do you guys, I mean, when you guys are doing, your workflows, like how much do you try to incorporate new stuff? Like, are you kind of in the mindset of like, this, I know this works, I've got it kind of efficiently organized, and if I introduce a new variation, it's gonna disrupt the flow to the point where it's not worth it? Or is it like, hey, I'm gonna invest in this new way? Like, how do you think about that?
Rocky, you want to go?
I have a perfect example of this.
Yeah. I feel like you and I are going to be very different on this.
We might be. So typically, well, let's go with like web design. Okay. So web design usually started out with like static kind of like outlining, right? Like even on paper. Now there's tools to do that, right? To do wireframing and everything. But I think the biggest change in web design, at least for me, is with Figma. Before we would do stuff in Photoshop, I would use Illustrator. There were some other like kind of tools that were used too for that sort of XD.
Shout out to Adobe. They tried.
Yeah. Well, they stopped working on it because of Figma, because they thought they were going to acquire Figma, and that fell through, if you remember.
XD also sucked, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, it was good enough for what you wanted, but yeah. So Figma came along and it was like, oh crap, I need to learn Figma. And it does get harder to like really adopt new technologies as you were complacent in your ways for so many years. So there was a little bit of a pain point in learning Figma and learning how to use it and stuff. But then once you see the benefits of some of the features of it, like auto layouts and things like that, it's like, oh damn, this is like so much better than the way I did it before. So it became almost a necessity to use Figma because of the, I need to share it with another team to build. I need, you had to sort of use it. So it was an inflection point, was like basically it became a necessity or a requirement to get the job done. That's when I usually will look into and adopt a new technology.
For me, it's similar, but I always think I'm doing everything wrong. So I always look at new tools and I'm like, ooh, maybe that's the way I should actually be doing it. Like that's the one that's going to make it look like I know what I'm doing, because I have no idea what I'm doing. So for me, I think like learning new tools has always been about that kind of. It's like, oh, this looks like something that I could use and make it, 10 times easier for me to churn out this piece of art, or like, I mean, that's why for me, I'm like a big adopter of AI into my process, because I'm like, oh, this is going to make everything a little easier, a little bit faster, or just do it better than I could. So I'm not above letting the computer robots do my job for me.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day in relation to music. I've been working on some new music stuff, and there's always a question of like, how much should you let the computer or the machine do creatively, right? Like if you have, I play guitar, and if you have like a bunch of effects pedals, you're letting the effects pedal change the sound that you're making quite a lot in some cases, and it's not really almost as much what you're playing as what you've chosen to run the signal through. And I'm kind of thinking about AI in the same way. It's like, like there's these new tools when you're composing, for example, that you can use as a composing partner, right? So you have you like a chord progression, and you type it into Logic, and you say, I want to have a bass player that's going to accompany me, and these are the chords. And it's not like a old school MIDI keyboard where it's like, ding donk, ding donk donk. It's like a real expressive bass line. And you can dial up and dial down like how much kind of intensity and how much complexity you want it to be. You can make it from like, the like quarter note dung 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 dung, or you can have it be like, Sly and the Family Stone bassist, so it's pretty cool. But the question becomes like, is that cheating, or like, is that somehow disrespecting the art? Right. And what I've found is like, the answer is always, it depends. Like any good question. I think if you just
how you're using it,
typed in "make me song" and like put that on your Spotify,
sure,
that probably wouldn't feel very artistic. But if you use that, and then that kind of inspires you, what I find is you'll hear something it does, and it'll kind of inspire you to build off of that. So is that different than me turning on the radio, and it's like the gospel channel, and I hear something from the gospel channel, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, I want to use that in my art? Is it kind of like personalized derivatives? Well, that's kind of what I think about AI.
Well, they say nothing is new, and I know sampling in music has been controversial for decades, right? And you look back at, it's funny, you listen to music now too, and oftentimes you'll be, oh, that's a cool song. And then you realize, oh, that song was recorded 30 years ago, right? And then, oh, there was an original song that was, 20 years before that. So it's all like derivative works in a sense, it feels like.
Yeah, it's like the bass line to Ice Ice Baby that was the bass line to
Under Pressure.
Under Pressure by Queen and
David Bowie.
David Bowie.
I recently saw Gautier, the new song by help me out, Doshi. Is that her name, Doshi?
Sure.
It's too new for Rocky and I.
Sorry, guys. I'm too old to be talking about current artists.
New music, yeah.
But she sampled, in her current hit song, she sampled Gautier, who had the one-hit wonder. And then I saw that somebody actually noticed that Gautier's song was a sampling of a 1967 song. So it is, it can go back even several generations of sampling now. It's really interesting. So what are you doing musically, Jay? Is that something you're doing for fun? Is that a hobby, or is this something you're kind of getting into for a potential, money maker?
I don't think it'll make any money. I would, if someone gave me money, I wouldn't give the money back, but it's not out of
good
principle.
Good place to plug your Spotify, Jay. Maybe we'll make some dollars from our tens of listeners.
Link in the bio.
I forgot how to do this. I had a band for a while called The Light Footwork, We do have a Spotify page. If you go to lightfootwork.com, you can see all of the things we
A
have.
good band name.
Yeah, thank you. We recorded a few albums back in like the early aughts. Is that what people call them? The zeros.
That's what I like to call them.
And we had a great time doing it, and it was really fun. And one of the things I just liked about recording music, for some reason, for me, like getting in the studio with your buddies and like kind of having a foundational idea, but then you have all these cool instruments and these cool processing things you can do in the studio that really make the studio kind of into its own instrument. So you get in there and it's like you're not just recording and archiving the sounds you've already made. You're also like coming up with new stuff in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of process I really enjoy. And so now I've got a bunch of songs that we've written over the years that I've stored up. My songwriting partner from the Light Footwork, I'm not sure if she'll be involved in this or not. I hope she is. But this is kind of stuff I've written down and recorded in my, voice memo while I'm sitting at a red light or something over the years. And I'm trying to go back and like piece together a bunch of songs, which is an interesting, workflow in and of itself. Is like, creativity doesn't strike when you want to in that 1 hour a week that you've like allotted on your calendar to do music. You can't like get all the creativity. I mean, maybe people like Elton John and really talented people can sit down and like do that. But for me, it comes in like very, random, uncontrollable small increments. And part of the skill is being able to like capture that and then later put it all together into some coherent thing. And so that's kind of what I've been doing recently, is putting this all together. We're going to record in the summer with a lot of the same musicians that recorded with Light Footwork. And it's going to be cool.
What is your process for creating music, and what's the creative process like? Because you're talking about the writing process, the creation process from your perspective. Does it change a lot once you get into a studio? You were talking about the collaboration and how you're kind of feeding off of different instruments, different people. Is that kind of the route that it takes?
Yeah, I think like you have to have enough of an idea. If you walk in to the studio with like a clean sheet of paper, I don't find that, for me, that doesn't work that well.
You're not going to get a pearl without that little grain of salt.
Right. It's like when you say, hey, where do you want to eat? And someone says like, I don't care. That doesn't help you decide where you want to eat. You need to be like, hey, where do you want to eat? And you're like, there's 5 places that I would find acceptable. That's actually pretty helpful, because then you've got enough choice, so you can still, have some narrowing it down, influence, but you don't have to kind of operate with this infinite landscape of possibilities. And I found that the more digital music has gotten, the more infinite the landscape. So you just have so many ways you can make music now. Like the number of if you're willing to be electronic, like the number of sounds that you can get is, quasi infinite. And then you go in and you need to have some kind of vision, but you don't want to have the vision be so tight that you're like, this is going to be a country song and this is going to be the way it's going to sound and blah, 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 blah. Like, I feel like if you do that, if you're too prescriptive about that stuff, you don't get any of the magic. You probably do if you're really good at music, but like me, I'm not really great. So like, I need a little bit of luck, It's like when I play golf, right? Like every 15th shot looks like a professional shot. And I'm like, if I could just string together those shots. But like in the recording studio, you kind of can. Like you can kind of,
I guess you can
string together your 15, every 15th, you can cut out the 14 that are not good. So you just have to be kind of, your process has to be able to do that. So, to answer your question, I basically write down interesting stuff. When I'm playing my guitar, I'll kind of write down interesting chord changes and chord structures and things. A lot of times I just record them on my voice memo thing on my phone. And then later I'll play back and be like, oh yeah, that was pretty interesting. And by the way, that's in the same key as this other thing. Maybe I'll put those two together and see if I can put them together into a song or a
kind
snippet.
Of building a little puzzle. You're taking components, putting them together.
Exactly. And I find it's more interesting to listen to if you don't. I'm not a big fan of like repeating over and over and over. I think people will discover like a cool, I mean, there's a place for that, but like people will discover a good part and then they'll be like, this is my song, this is my chorus. And I feel like you always want to kind of leave people wanting more. So rather than repeat the chorus 500 times, just be like, okay, we're going to give you this awesome chorus and then we're not going to use it anymore. And people will be like, oh, that, I really like that one part, but you know, it's gone. And so the challenge is to go to, you know, do 5 of those in a song where you have all these awesome parts and people. So that's how we try to do it, but it's kind of hit or miss.
So listening to you talk, and I know you've done music for a long time. I think, didn't you mention you had a band or you were doing music in college too?
Yeah, I remember my first band was called Two Hand Touch in high school. I was in 7th grade. We played one show at Mallory Robinson's like 6th grade birthday party or something. Then we disbanded.
Was a Yoko. She broke up that band. That's all it took.
Yeah, that was it.
So I want to get back to the thread of this whole episode, is this unconventional sort of path, right? So you're kind of focusing on music and everything right now. Talk a little bit about how, like, what'd you do before and how does that play a role into where you are today? Because I think if you look back at your kind of breadcrumb trail of life, that you could kind of see like these things stitched together at some point. I'd love to hear your story, your version of that.
Yeah, no, this is in some way it's a great time to have this discussion because I feel like I've kind of gone full circle in a lot of things and touched a lot of interesting or things that interest me. You know, I started out in high school. I was like a pretty decent student. I was interested in a lot of things. But I was really interested in music at the same time. I was really into like the, you know, early 90s kind of garage band, you know, scene. I grew up in the, you know, Washington, D.C. area, which has a lot of great, you know, musical history, like, you know, Fugazi and all these bands that came out of that whole era. And then I was also in the same era of when like ska was super popular. And I think while that was kind of a very genre-fied, you know, type of music, very genre heavy, I feel like one nice thing about it is it kind of blended so many different instruments. Like you could have a band that had a horn section or, you know, cool organs, and it wasn't just like rock and roll, guitar, bass, and drums. It was, you know, totally musically different. And I think that really helped get excited about broadening the music. Then when I got into school, I was like, well, I have to decide what to study. And in the early, you know, into the 90s, early 2000s, like computer programming was like this new thing that was going to be the future. And I think it was the future, you know, for a lot of things. And I kind of just didn't know what else to do. So I was like, well, this is like an interesting puzzle. Like making computer programs was super fun and kind of a puzzle. And I found that to be rewarding in the kind of problem solving type way.
Were you thinking of that as being tied to the music, or were you kind of thinking of it as an avenue to create more music, or was it just something you were thinking like, this will be my profession and I'll pursue music in the meantime?
Yeah, I think I was. I think the recording studios were starting to get digitized at that point. So before Avid bought DigiDesign, I think Avid bought DigiDesign, but back when Pro Tools was like a new thing, and kind of operating Pro Tools is almost like having a technical degree. Now people do all that stuff on their, you know, laptop. And the number of tracks I'm running on my laptop in like my, you know, spare bedroom is more than the best studio could run, you know, simultaneously in when we started recording. So it's really gotten a lot easier to get access to that stuff. Like Logic's $200 now for the, you know, you can, it's crazy how inexpensive these things have gotten. But I think I got into computer science because I was like, I want to get involved in digital recording and see how that, I always thought the recording piece of the music was really, really exciting. And to me, that was the most fun. So I ended up going to grad school for what they called music technology, which wasn't really a thing they offered in the United States. So I had to go to Ireland to do it. And they have a whole different kind of curriculum and Ireland's great at supporting artists. As a country, they really care about, music in Ireland is like a whole thing. Like it's
I find
first of
Europe
all,
in general is better about supporting the arts, and so I
yeah,
think that's why so much music kind of comes across this way, across the pond, as they say, right?
yeah. I mean, it's a more respect. I mean, in my opinion, it's kind of treated like a more respected profession over there. Like if you say I'm a musician, like people aren't, looking down at you.
Yeah.
There, that's like
Yeah.
a kind of a respectable profession. And I'm not saying that's not the case here. Like I think if you said I'm part of the New York Philharmonic, people would be like, wow, that's impressive. But if you just said, yeah, I'm a professional musician, and you look kind of scraggly, they might just think, okay,
You
this
live out of your
guy's like,
car.
yeah,
Your
exactly.
Volkswagen. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think I got into that because of it was more of like an academic way to study this kind of computer science music connection. And that's a lot of what I worked on in grad school. Like my thesis was how to was about writing a piece of software that allowed you to control your recording studio on a Palm Pilot. This is how old this is. So you had like a Palm OS program,
Hey,
which was
those
not
were
super
big. Those are going to last forever. I had a
It
Palm
was
Pilot. I was
it
not
was
giving
cool. I
that
had
thing
to
up.
get a Palm Pilot for this, which was hilarious because that was kind of expensive back then. I was like, I have to buy this Palm Pilot so I can do my thesis.
I, for some
But
reason, wanted a Palm Pilot so badly in high school. I was like, I got to get me one of those. And then I played Snake on it, and that was about it.
Yeah.
you learned that graffiti language that you had to like, to write. You had to have like this
write.
new language.
Yeah.
So yeah, I basically think I got into computer science partially because the music, connection to it. And I learned that, music, I worked a little bit in recording studios, and it's one of those things. You guys, maybe I'll turn the question around on you. You probably were artistic as kids and were into art and stuff. And then you got a, W-2 from being an artist. And at some point it becomes more of a job. And I'm curious if that diluted the passion at all, or if that was, if that made it more fun because you got to do the thing you loved for your job.
Oh, that's a good
That's interesting.
question. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's reduced for me. I don't think it's reduced the amount of fun or enjoyment I get out of like creating and making cool shit. And I remember there being a time when people told me it would, and they were like, no, just do that as a hobby. Don't make your career about the thing you love doing. Specifically, is photography at the time. And so it has never felt, shooting weddings in my early days, that started to feel like a grind, and that started to feel like not very, every one of them felt the same, and you started getting in that rut. So I think kind of along the same lines as what you were talking about, being able like shifting to different avenues for creativity and learning new tools, and I think that, going down this road of the technology involved with creating things, it definitely keeps it fresh and keeps it from you feeling like you're just doing the same thing over and over. And I think that's maybe one of the keys to not getting that kind of burnout, or feeling like you're, losing that creative spark for it, that enjoyment from it. I don't know, Rocky, what about you?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think the technology does tend to keep you on your toes. Like, oh, this is a new way to learn and do something. But I think if you go all the way back to like when I was, drawing in a sketchbook and like had these grandiose ideas of working for Disney and doing film and animation, that there's always these little shift points that happen, like micro shift points that happen in your life. The last episode we talked about kind of how I started, and just as a quick recap, I started working at a tech company doing shipping and receiving while I was going to school. And then they saw my funny drawings on the whiteboard of my caricatures of all the employees there. And they're like, oh, this guy should do marketing. He's great. So I did. So I'm like, all right, I could do the website. I could do the logo. I could do branding. I mean, I never had any practical experience doing those things, but it's like, okay, I could read books. I would go to Barnes and Noble. I'd read all the design books in there and read about all the agencies, the fabled agencies on the East Coast and all
Well,
the design.
it sounds like it captured your interest, right? Like it pulled you in
It did.
a little
I
bit.
I didn't expect to go that direction. I was like really focused. Like I want to make film. I want to make movies. I want to do animation. I want to draw characters. And then it shifted to like, oh, and as you said, Jay, when you get your that first W-2, it's like, oh, I can make money doing this thing. And it became a little bit more like real and, oh, I should probably focus on that because that equals money, right? So it wasn't necessarily like, I think any creative pursuit would have brought me joy as it is now. Like it just so happened I fell into the design visual artist sort of bucket. But I,
Yeah.
I could have been, if I was in music, that I would be happy. If I was in film and animation or production, I would be happy with that. Like I love all those things still today. I'm just better at some than others. In music, forget it. I don't do anything in music, but I could appreciate it. And I know how to fit it into storytelling and stuff like that, right? Like that stuff, I don't create it, but I know how to use it.
Jay, how did you go from this engineering background? Because when I've worked with you in the past, it's never been in either thing, music or engineering. It was more in
Yeah,
the
I was
kind
doing like
of
business
marketing
development.
and
Yeah.
business and
Yeah.
sales and tell me a little bit about, I guess, how you got from that point to now coming all the way full circle and doing music again. Like what happened
Yeah.
in the middle there?
Yeah, basically I was working on products like on the engineering side when I was younger, that software products, and I was seeing how people were using these products. Like these were complicated things, so they would, the engineers would get involved with the customer because you had to help the customer figure out the right way to use it and the right way for us to develop the product. And so, it, people weren't using it from a user's manual. They were like sitting with the engineers and be like, okay, this is what I want to do with this thing. It's a very expensive software product that does a very specific thing. And I want to be able to do all of these things. And that interaction between the person kind of using the product, and the development of the product, that point of interaction was really exciting for me, because I felt like, when you're sitting there making the product, you have a vision of how someone's going to use it, but like that's not the truth. The truth is not, um the you have a hunch they
You
might
never
use it that
know how
way,
somebody's going to
but
use it. Yeah.
yeah, you don't know. And so when you watch them use it, that's the truth. Like that's the source data, if you so to speak. And so there was just something so like kind of true and honest about seeing someone use the thing, and in your mind you're like, oh, this is the coolest feature of this thing that I've ever done. It's probably similar when you make a piece of art. You say, well, what do you like about this graphic I did?
Yeah.
And they're like, I love the color. And you're like, but
And
don't you like how I made that one thing do that? And they're like, I didn't even care about that at all.
Yeah, all the little
Yeah.
secret things I put in there that I spent
Right.
so much time on. You don't see any of that crap?
Yeah,
Damn it.
exactly. And I just got a lot of joy out of that truth of the customer's opinion. And I feel like with art that's really kind of an outpouring of your soul, like your music or like something you're doing creatively, you almost don't want to know the answer from the
Right.
quote customer, because you're not really doing it for them. You're doing it kind of for yourself to like feel like you've made that expression. And when I make music, I don't really care that much. I mean, I want people to like it, but I don't. It doesn't make me not like it if they don't like it, right? So like, if I like it, it's great.
You sound like you
if
have
I
a very
don't like
healthy,
it, I don't care.
well balanced. It sounds like you have a very good therapist, because that is not true for so many creatives in this world. I feel like
I thought that's what this is for. This is
this is
like,
our therapy. This is
therapy.
therapy session.
Yeah.
I think it's a good, really
Jay,
great
tell
point,
me about
though.
your mother.
She's a
I think
very
it's a
sweet
great,
woman.
it's a great point though, because I think that's one of the things that differentiates like graphic design and art. Even though you could consider graphic design a part of art, but most graphic design has a commercial use case for it, right?
Yeah.
It has to work.
Which is there's a strategic or creative brief attached to it. So art, and I say this all the time, art is for you. Graphic design or creative or visual design, that's going to be for something or someone else.
It's fair.
And so it's a very important distinction, and that's why you can't have a whole lot of ego in design, because there's a purpose for it that's beyond you. You can have plenty of ego in your music or your art that you're doing for yourself.
Yeah, I kind of think about it like there's like concentric circles of like in the middle, everyone has the ego kernel,
Mhm.
where you're like, no matter what, there's going to be something that gets real for people. And the key is, so you can't get rid of that. And like people probably shouldn't try to get rid of that. I think it's actually important to have that.
Mhm.
But the second concentric circle is like this kind of, maybe the outside one is, I'll go back to the middle one, but maybe the outside one is like the like soldier for hire. Like whatever you want. Like I
Yeah.
don't care at all.
Yeah.
There's like
Yeah.
none of my soul is involved in this level at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the key of like creative health is to develop this middle circle
Mhm.
where you get some joy out of it still, so it's driving you to do a better job. Because if you go to just like this, creative soldier of fortune, it's like
Yeah.
you're just like, I don't care, just tell me what you want and I'll do it, and it
Right.
becomes
Well,
like
and
too much of a task.
you still need that kernel of like thinking that you can do something well and that
Yeah.
you kind of have the confidence. I think that ego it's important to tell you like, I can do this. It's something that I can do better than the other person that you could have hired or you could work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the way I try to exploit what you're saying is I try to be like, I do things that are usually in like a group. Like music is, for me, it's like with a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to always think that I mean, find a situation where I'm like, I'm the worst musician in this group of people. Like,
Mm.
and somehow like I've just barely snuck in. Like at my theory, like I have this theory that how like a grade scale at school, like 100 is like an A plus,
Mm-hmm.
and like a 90 is like a B. I think it should be a 90 to 91 is an A plus, and over a 91 is just an A, because anybody can put like any awesome person can go all the way to 100. The key is like, can you just squeak in? Because then you put the minimum effort in to get into the
Okay.
highest
All
category.
right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like that with music too. Like I want to play with people that they're like, I don't know if I should really be playing with this guy. This might be like bringing me
Right.
down. But for me, I'm like, this is great. I'm learning all kinds of stuff from this person.
Right.
This is excellent.
No,
I think
that's
you're onto
true.
something. I think you're onto something. I think there's something very true about the person that just did enough and didn't go too much for it. Like Harvard should stop letting in people that got perfect SAT scores. Like maybe
Well, I
maybe
always feel
those
like
people are
if you're
too
getting A pluses,
invested.
if you're getting A pluses across the board, you're probably in the wrong class. Like,
Not
you know what I mean? Like
challenging?
you're playing
Yeah.
down, right? Like I always thought about that, and I've told my kids this too in sports, is like you always want to be on the team with like the best players, because you're going to learn so much about how to play and how to compete with those players because they're so much better than you, rather than being the best player on the worst team, right? So I think that's kind of how I've articulated Jay's point there too.
I was walking on Stanford's campus the other day, and there's a building named after Charlie Munger, who I'm pretty sure was the second in command at Berkshire Hathaway to Warren Buffett.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is the guy you want to be. This dude was like, second in command to Warren Buffett, but he's still got his name on buildings at Stanford. And someone should fact check that to make sure I'm right, but I'm pretty sure that's who that is. And that's a great situation. I bet
that's a good place
Charlie
to be.
Munger learned a lot of stuff from hanging out with Warren Buffett, and vice versa too. There's something to be said. Like, I think everyone does bring stuff to the table, and society has like a conventional metric that they use. Like when music is really good. Like you look at people's just kind of plain virtuosity and you say like, wow, that person can do like lots and lots and lots of notes. They can make them sound very musical. They can, do very quickly. They could kind of emulate other people that are known to be good. Like there's a bunch of metrics that people kind of give you like, well, that guy's a good guitar player. But I actually think that one of the metrics should be like, if you go play with people, how annoying are you? Like, when you record, you have to spend like 5 days in the studio, 10 days in the studio. Like, there's something to be said for being that chill dude who's like, yeah, I'll have another burrito.
Goes
like,
with
I'm
the
not
flow
going to be
a bit more.
like, going with the
all
flow
obsessed
can
with
get a
their
lot of
ego
art.
and putting their stamp on it. I think Dave Grohl is a great example of that. In interviews I've seen of him, he talks about how he's the not a very good drummer, and when he started out in Nirvana, like he was just
when
not,
he started
was
out,
just
maybe,
doing.
yeah.
He only
Yeah.
knew a few things, and he was just doing those few things, and like he played it slow because he couldn't play any faster, and like, and you know, look at his success. So it is very true. I think it's more than just talent that gets you to where you want to go, I guess.
Yeah, it's like the integration of a lot of things that make it work.
Yeah.
You know, like if you can't just be, I mean, there is a place for like the talent savant, I think, where it's like, you know, they wheel in the person who's like just has this one super talent and they kind of do the super talent and then they kind of wheel them out like that. But there, you need to have other people that are kind of the integrators that get the stuff kind of going and off the ground like that.
Yeah.
A lot of
talk to other people.
Yeah, a lot of good records wouldn't exist, for example, and a lot of good companies wouldn't have started, and a lot of good technologies wouldn't have started if someone didn't just be like, we're going to practice again next week. Like someone who's kind of driving that action. Otherwise, the good people would just sit, you know, a lot of times the best people are the ones that are like, don't have the direction. You know, it's rare to have all of the things in one person.
Yeah.
Right.
And have you found, like you mentioned this in startups culture, is there, in the startups you've been a part of in tech and in Silicon Valley, do you find that that's true? Is there a savant? Is there somebody that like had that idea and you build a team around them to propel it forward? Is it kind of in the same lens?
Yeah, I think there are definitely people that are exceptional, and I mean that in the true sense of the word, exceptional, talented people in a lot of these companies. I do think if you want to do something that's very impactful, you need to have that level of exceptional talent. Like you can't just, you know, make it out of a combination of a bunch of components of it and put it together. There needs to be some real energy source there. But I do think like the best leaders that I've seen in tech are the ones that have respect for kind of all the functions. So like I've seen companies where, you know, engineering, or usually in tech, like engineering and kind of those functions are kind of the exalted functions. But I think the real successful people are like, they recognize that a good company is one that pieces together all the functions in a good way. So, you know, it's like in the Olympics, in like a decathlon or something with a lot of events. Like if you were a great pole vaulter, you might win that one piece, but the person who wins the gold medal actually might be the fourth best person at everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's just they happen to be the fourth best person at everything. So they like get points in every single event. And so I think it's the same in the startup. You do want to get, I mean, obviously you'd want to be the first best at everything if you thought that was possible. But so you shouldn't, you know, intentionally try to be bad. But like, I think it's more important
to hire the fourth worst person.
Right. But I think that you want to try to, rather than spending all your time trying to go from, you know, 98th percentile to 100 percentile, you want to cover some more bases that are not being covered in respect. Like,
get everything up to 90 before you try to get everything to 100.
Like having like a pretty good technical team and a pretty good sales team is better than having a really, really good technical team and a really bad sales team, or vice versa, I think.
I think the vice versa would probably be even worse, but yeah. The bad product and the great sales team.
Yeah, that's like a timeshare or something.
Basically.
So I think that's, you need to respect, like if there could have been an elimination of a function, like if we could have gotten rid of sales, you know, we would have done it as a society already. No one likes being sold to. That would have been eliminated. And the fact that there's still jobs for salespeople means that it's got some importance still. And so if it's going to be a job, you better make sure you have people that are sophisticated and can do a good job.
It all sounds like building a successful company. A startup is similar to starting a band, and you're just looking for people that can play well together.
Yeah.
And maybe get
you need
one
a good
guy
drummer.
that's really, good drummer.
Really good.
Doesn't have to be the best, maybe, but somebody that's going to show up to practice on time.
Yeah. That's my advice to start a band. Find a good drummer, and you'll have a good band.
All right.
Like, yeah.
Good
Key
tip.
component. Yeah.
I like that. With that, I think that's our takeaway from this one. Find a good drummer. Jay, I'm really happy. I don't know if Rocky, you got any other questions you wanted to hit Jay with?
Well, I
I
think
think
I think it was a great conversation. I loved all the different insights, Jay, that you brought to the table, and just being able to demonstrate that you could have all these different kind of experiences in life, and it takes you kind of down this winding road. It's never a straight line, and I think that's always the takeaway, is that you could start somewhere and end up somewhere else, and if you look back, it could be pretty messy, and that's
Yeah.
totally fine.
I
Yeah,
love
the
it.
wheel in the sky keeps on turning.
That's right.
A lot of music references today.
It's been a
So
great
I'm gonna go
music
full
show.
circle with the
Yeah,
journey.
I
Yeah.
like it. I
We
like
did
it.
talk
Full
about Rick
circle.
Rubin before you jumped on, Jay, so that maybe that set the tone.
It really aligns
That dude
well
has a
with it.
good beard.
That's a good beard. Well, as with every somewhat creative show, I wanted to end with a inside the actor's studio. Some of the best questions ever given to the guests. I'm going to steal right from the man himself. And for this one, I feel like Jay, you've had so many different career paths, worn so many different hats, are interested in so many different, avenues of creativity. What profession would you most not want to do?
Most not want to do?
What you not want to do? Is there a job out there that you're like, I knew starting out in my life, I did not want to do that?
I think flight attendant would be.
Really?
I
Not a
mean,
fan of planes?
I mean, it's just like the fuselage. Like if
Mm.
like it's just
Trapped
kind of
in a
like being
can?
trapped with all those people that don't want to be there either. I feel
That's fair.
like those people are doing the Lord's work. Like
Mm.
they're up there trying to hold it all together. Everyone is feels
Yeah.
a sense of entitlement. It's it's crazy that can be the case when you're in a piece of metal that's like transporting you between different places, that somehow
Yeah.
you're like not good,
A
not
hot
good
dog in the
enough,
sky.
like
I think
it could be better.
I'm gonna misremember this, but there's a great comedian that has a joke. I think it's Louis C.K.
I
but
think
can't
you're right.
remember for sure.
Yes.
He's got
About
the
the
joke
Wi-Fi.
about. Oh, I don't know that one. I was thinking of how people come off of a plane, and you the first thing you always ask somebody after a travel on a plane is, how was your flight? And they're always like, oh, it was so shitty. It was like we sat on the tarmac for an hour, and like they ran out of Sprite. It was the worst. And he's like, you flew through the sky. It's like magic. And you're complaining about these little insignificant things. And you flew like a bird. 150 years ago, people would have thought you were magic. You were a wizard. And you're complaining about peanuts? It's a good one.
I think it's the same bit that I was thinking of too when you said that about the guy
Maybe
wanting
he's
better
added
Wi-Fi.
to it. Maybe he's got Wi-Fi in there now too.
Yeah. It's a great concept though, this entitlement on the airplane. I feel like flight attendants, I have nothing but respect for them, and I don't think I could do it.
Yep. Right on. Well, Jay, thanks so much for being here. We really enjoyed having you.
Yeah, it's great to
Thanks,
see you guys.
Jay. Yeah, always awesome talking to you.